Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Volpe Create Show, the weekly podcast about video games and creative technology. I am your host, Chris Volpe, joining you on this lovely Friday that's actually not too hot. It's supposed to be blazing, but it's not too bad. Uh, Joined always by Pumpkin, who's sleeping over there, baby girl, who's actually on my lap today. She's just kind of hanging out. And Mr. Lucas, how are you today?
Oh, I am doing great. A little tired, but I'm glad it's not 100 degrees in without power. So
Yeah, yes, that is nice. We're supposed to have a party tomorrow. It's like a quasi summer slash my birthday party. But I think it's still supposed to be like 95 degrees. It's going to be in the evening. Do you want to get down, sweetheart? It's supposed to be in the evening, so I'm hoping that by then it's died down a little bit because the past couple of days have been nice, but before that, man, oh man.
yeah, agree.
Every week we bring you a special guest. This guest I'm excited to have. I've been watching his content for many years, and then we got a surprise visit at GDEX this year, which was really awesome. So she says, "How are you doing today?"
Doing all right, man. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. I like your backdrop there. You got all your toys behind you, and your YouTube plaque celebrating your success. So
Yes,
um,
and interviews and stuff.
Yeah, for those who don't know, what's like a 20-second recap of the year story?
The elevator pitch is I run a YouTube channel where we basically take the camera anywhere we want to try to find secrets and new discoveries to some of our favorite games. So I curate a 15-minute long video for, tons and tons of video games. I have over 200 episodes now. And we just try to find the most interesting things that a player normally could never find. So it's been a blast. It's been fun.
Yeah, over 200 episodes. That's a lot, man. That is a lot of work and dedication into this effort. So I'm gonna ask the general stage setting question of what got you started in this. Why this particular idea?
Oh, well, this particular idea it's kind of a funny story. It's one, I've always kind of known what it would take to make a YouTube channel. So, you either gotta have a personality that no one's ever seen before, but is very attachable, likable, or something like that, or B, you have an idea that no one's ever done before. Those are the two easiest ways to launch yourself on the YouTube platform. And there was just one time where I found the ability to move out of bounds in games, and I was like, wow, this is really cool. And so I uploaded a raw clip to my YouTube channel, and it got picked up by websites that I've been trying to get feature my content for years. And I was like, that's just a raw clip. I could turn this into a show, sure. And so I just kind of, just winged it and just had the audience slowly kind of morph me into what they wanted to see most. And Boundary Break kind of became what it is today due to, just seeing an idea that was not being utilized on the platform, and as well as just kind of being molded by the audience itself. So, yeah.
So you mentioned molding. This is something we kind of talked about at another panel with some folks, but these channels, as you're creating your content, unless you're someone like, I don't know, Larry King, and even he's changed, you're gonna alter over time and sort of move in new directions. What is it that the community like wanted to see? Like, how did you get from your initial idea to where you are now?
Well, I started to see what people were more engaged with, which is seeing like actual discoveries, like something like, I don't know, seeing a Sailor Moon manga in the book that Piston Honda's reading in Punch Out or whatever. Like those things really started to excite people. And so they would talk about that a lot in the comments. And then there was just a lot of people that, were very, very kind at the start. Very different when you get to my level. But when you're first starting out, everybody's in your corner. Everybody wants you to succeed. So if they have any criticism, it's usually done very gingerly. And they'll say things like, oh, I absolutely loved what you had here. And I'll tell you, like, I think what would make it just even slightly better is if you kind of clipped out any times where you said or you kind of just sat there and thought for like 3 seconds of dead air or something. Like those things would be nice to see. And then it's like, maybe you could also work it into categories. Maybe instead of going back and forth to one subject throughout the video, you can kind of all lump them into one category. And it was like little things like that I would take in at a time. And then over the course of 6 years, it's just kind of been an amalgamation of all those little pieces of advice turned into, what it is today. So
So a lot of that sounds like I don't know, I would say basic sort of just production professionalism skills, just learning how to better craft. Because in essence, you're telling a story, and you're picking and choosing how to present that information. I mean, was video work and stuff? I mean, were you familiar with that before you got into this?
minor. It's so like I always wanted to do YouTube. Basically, although I've definitely had limitations on myself as a person, I've always wanted to be in entertainment in some way. And then the internet comes out, and then YouTube shows up, and James Rolfe suddenly just lights up the internet with the idea that you can make a produced content around video games. And it was like I was already a huge gamer. It was like my number one hobby. But at the time, and even still to some extent today, video games doesn't have like a huge presence on mainstream media like television and movies. It's only starting to now kind of like ease itself into a more comfortable place, whereas it was very kind of like obscure or niche in the past. So YouTube was like an in for someone like me, where it was like, oh, I can work at my own pace. There's no one to say, you're doing this wrong. You're not doing it to my specifications, or, you have to dedicate 15 years of your life doing this for me before I even give you a shot at that or something like that. It's just you and yourself and what you can produce. And so when I saw the Angry Video Game Nerd, I was like, I want to do YouTube. That would be great. And so there was a whole myriad of ideas that I had that just didn't quite stick. And in hindsight, you look at it and you go like, yeah, I could see why that didn't stick. I had the wrong mentality towards what would be entertaining for others. So I
You have
can
one you
see.
can share with us?
Sure, there was like one of the most inventive ideas that I had was just kind of taking a game console and then just going through my personal experiences through that game's lifespan, that console's lifespan. So talking about which games I got, which games I saw at friend's house, and like games I really wish I could have gotten, and stuff like that. And it's like it's certainly interesting to myself, and it would be interesting to someone that would be a fan of me. But going from ground zero, who's going to care what some rando on the internet wanted to play as a kid during the Sega Genesis era or something like that?
Sure.
So yeah, so like in hindsight, the reason why that idea failed was that it was too focused on myself. I was like, that's not kind of thinking about a wider appeal. Like, how does this connect with any random person on the internet that wants to consume some entertainment? So yeah, that's one. And then there was other ones that just were not as inspired, like doing a compare and contrast between Donkey Kong Country and Donkey Kong Country Returns, and trying to equate which one would be like a more valuable video game or whatever, stuff like that.
Hard. That's a hard competition there.
Yeah.
Just for fun, what was your first console?
Oh, NES.
Yes,
Yeah, I
nice.
mean,
Okay.
technically, like my dad had a Commodore 64 home computer,
Mhm.
and so my very first exposure to video games was him calling me into his closet because he gutted out the closet to turn into the computer cubby space,
Nice.
and he booted up Dig Dug and Donkey Kong Country and Popeye that day. Um, but it wasn't until I think like I think like 1 year before the Super Nintendo came out that a family friend just kind of gifted us a Nintendo Entertainment System, and we had Duck Hunt, Mario Brothers, and Tetris to start with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What about you?
my first was a ColecoVision. I had that,
Nice.
and then of course, like in the mid. So I was born in '81, and in the mid to late '80s is when like PCs really started kind of becoming a thing in people's houses, and so I was doing some gaming on that, and then of course the Nintendo, Super Nintendo, and I've had almost every system, more or less since then. But yeah, the ColecoVision was my first one. I loved it, and then it got hit by lightning and it died. So R.I.P. R.I.P.
Dang.
ColecoVision. Uh, so um, one of the things that I find really interesting, and I guess it's almost in line with sort of me growing up, and I'm going to say this, and I don't know if it's entirely true, but it's just sort of like a feeling I get, is like there was such a sense of discovery in like a lot of the older games, particularly I think some of the PC games and stuff that were moving into kind of like the 3D realm, where they were like hiding things and there'd be little Easter eggs and stuff all over. and it was sort of fun to like poke around in every nook and cranny. And I don't know if it's a case of me getting older or that games are just so big now that like you just can't keep hiding things, or if you hide something, like maybe you'll never find it. I don't know if you played Cyberpunk, but everyone talks about the vending machine quest. I was like, what the hell are you people talking about? Like, I've never seen that quest, so I still have to find it. Um, so I don't know if there's like just whatever the factors are, but one of the things I've enjoyed about your show is just that sense of discovery. We talked a little bit about it before we went online and stuff, but just finding all the neat details on things. I watched your FF7 one today, and I mean, you pointed out some stuff like Sephiroth's belt. Just the detail on the belt. I was like, I never, unless you would have pointed that out, I never would have. And I don't know if that has some narrative connect. I mean, the Final Fantasy ethos is all over the place, so who the hell knows? But I don't know if that has a connection to something. But that's one of the things I found really interesting about your content you're creating. Is that I guess what are the things that get you excited when you're kind of poking around in these games?
Oh, like number one is always when the developer hides something deliberately. Like, again, my number one discovery of all time, to a point now where if I ever do a panel and do like a live performance thing, I have it on deck, because it comes up so often. And one of the number one questions is always like, what's your favorite discovery on Boundary Break? And so now I have like a live example of it, and it was what I mentioned earlier. It's like when the developer just deliberately wanted to put in like an Easter egg that no one is supposed to be able to see. So, like the example that I mentioned earlier was the Piston Hondo manga that he's reading. He's like in between rounds looking at a book, and from the player's perspective, with no camera manipulation whatsoever, you only see the outside of the book with no label on it. But if you were to take the camera to the inside pages, you'd see that there's panels of legitimate Sailor Moon manga, which is a completely different franchise that's not in any way, shape, or form owned by Nintendo.
Sure.
So, yeah, and there's like a whole story behind it and everything. It's insane, but like it's very rare. But when it does happen, it certainly is something that is super exciting to see. Like, if I am in the moment, creating and collecting footage, it's almost like a deep shame that there isn't some way to archive my reaction when I see it for the first time, because it's just kind of like a super excited moment for me. Like, nobody's in the room. I'm just all by myself, typically in the dark because I like to work at night. And all of a sudden, just you see something that the whole entire world hasn't seen yet, and you're just like, oh my
Yeah.
god.
Why don't you
Uh,
record yourself?
um, there's a couple reasons. One is I'd have to set it up every single time, and it also just takes up hard drive space. And
Yeah.
if it's actively recording, that means it's taking up CPU, and which can affect the game's performance and stuff like that. So there's a lot of reasons why I wouldn't think to do it. And then might think like, oh, just live stream it then. But actually, what ends up happening is that trying to collect Boundary Break footage live and in the moment can be very disorienting for other people watching. Like, you are in full control of what you're doing with that camera,
Yeah.
but when you're just watching it and you don't have any influence on where that camera's going, and you're just seeing it clip into things and kind of like jitter around, go upside down and swirl, it can be kind of nauseating. It can be a bit of a headache-inducing experience to just watch.
Yeah,
So
totally.
so it doesn't really become a good live stream sort of content either, unless it's heavily curated, like I've kind of come to accomplish over the years with certain games. But like, again, if you're just doing it strictly for work purposes, it just becomes cumbersome to just try to record myself, I think. But there's still leftover residual excitement, of course, when I go to talk about it in the episode. So it kind of translates out pretty well when
Yeah, I
I
was
make the
gonna say, I
episode.
mean, I think you do a good job of bringing out like the excitement of finding these little things, these little moments. And yeah, I mean, you're already doing a lot. I don't know. You need to add another layer on top of the process you're doing, because I imagine it. I mean, it takes you a while, right? How much footage? You're you're I think what 10-15 minutes is a typical um, video for you. Like, how much footage are you capturing to get to whittle down to that amount?
Oh, it can range from 40 to 60 clips, and so I'm not perpetually recording everything that's happening in the game. Typically, excuse me, unless no, I never pre-record unless it's like, I know that I'm getting to a moment that should have something interesting, and there's no way to redo that scene or whatever. Like it's a cut scene, and there's
Hmm.
no save states or anything like that. It's just straight up, you have this one opportunity to take a look at this cut scene, and that's it. And then the game auto saves or something. So you're out of luck. You better find what you can find. It's only then that I like hit the record button early, then trigger the scene, and then try to find what I can find, um, and then just stop the clip. But
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be like around 45 to 60 clips, and then the process from there is that like I review all the clips and I try to categorize them. Now this is a more recent thing that I've started doing. I think I started it in 2020 maybe, where I finally have decided like for my sake and not like having to go back and be like, oh, I forgot this clip or whatever. I'm going to look at all the clips first, all 60, and just review them, and then just kind of give them like a letter category. Like if it's like, oh, this thing is looking inside of a model. Okay, that's category A. Oh, this one's finding dev cubes or something. This one's category B or something like that. So yeah, it's the process of sifting through all those, categorizing them, and then doing commentary over them. And yeah, it gets a little bit time consuming for sure. And then you have to also consider the fact that I try not to break these episodes into parts usually. And it's mostly because like, for one, it makes that one video really solid. It makes the content really valuable to people on the internet, and it also makes sure that they don't miss something that maybe if I put it into a part two, they might not see it. And it also just kind of separates it from the competition. That like, if you see a boundary break video versus like break boundaries or whatever, that you'll look at my content and say like, oh, he's definitely, he puts a lot more effort into getting it all into one video. So what ends up
Okay.
happening as a result of that is that you have to like do the entire game, from back to front. So
Sure. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, editing, I think, is one of the most important pieces of any sort of artistic endeavor that a lot of people don't think about. It's made in the edit, you know. I was like, we'll fix it in post or whatever. Um, but the editing is super important. I mean, have you thought about doing like longer form stuff, or do you feel like this is? Have you found your flow? You think that works for the channel?
yeah, I think YouTube's actually pulling away from longer form. I think there's a place for it still on the website, but I think the reason why there was a sharp decline for the channel in 2019 was, a couple of things, but I think a big thing was that they moved on to shorts. So shorts is like this thing where YouTube is like, oh, we want to compete with TikTok. We want to try to do our best to bury it. So we're going to put a hyper focus on content that's under a minute long. And, my show is 2 videos a month and 15 to 30 minutes in length. So
Yeah.
I really didn't fit into that cubby hole. So it was a very awkward period. So yeah, as far as doing longer content, no, I have experimented with that before. I've done like a very early on, I'd say like within year one, I was like, oh, maybe I can kind of do a separate series where I'm just kind of like really taking my time with a singular area of a game or something like that. And just kind of like having a very loose commentary, not a heavily curated one. And just kind of like taking the camera through a vista or something and just allowing the viewer to just kind of soak in one particular area of a game or
Yeah.
two or three particular areas of a game. And it bombed super hard because it was like, it just like you said, it's all in the editing. And when the viewer kind of sees a type of content that doesn't have as much effort into it as your other stuff, they take notice to that. And each YouTuber has their own different standard that they have set for themselves, but the viewer doesn't forget that standard. Even though they might not be like as hypercritical or as looking at it through a magnifying glass, they just have this instinctive know that like, oh, this isn't. She says this isn't Boundary Break. click off, and then it tells the algorithm, nah, they didn't like it. So yeah,
Mm,
I have tried that. It didn't really work out,
okay.
sadly. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I'm as a novice video content creator. So my background's like I did a lot of photography work, video work, and stuff, but not sort of in this realm. Uh, but I always feel like it's a constant, and what I'm hearing from folks that come to GDEX, and then I know in the industry, it's like this constant battle against the algorithm, where it's almost this like weird reinforcing system where like YouTube's trying to find what people are going to gravitate towards, but in the process of altering their algorithm, it's like they create these sort of senses that can pull away from people. So like someone like me, for example, your content is much more interesting than I don't what am I going to get out of a 30-second or 60-second video? Like I don't is someone going to do something mildly funny for 30 seconds? Like every so often the Facebook where the reels or whatever will pop up. And I think 98% of the time I click on one, I was like, why did I watch this? Like it's just there's nothing that valuable, at least for me, and maybe I'm just an old cranky guy, but I'm more interested. Like for me, it's like, dude, the longer the better. If you can give me like an hour of content that I can like put on my side monitor while I'm working and just like walk through stuff, or like I can on a lazy night I can just sit down and watch, something like that's up my alley. But it seems like you're having to fight against the platform itself sometimes to even maintain that. Am I hearing that correctly, or am I off base on that?
No, your information's really solid. I for 2020 into 2021, you know, I tried to put out the big guns. There was like a lot of games that I was holding back for what was meant to be like, oh, once I see like an uptick or something like that, like a really good month or something like that, I'm gonna throw in like a huge banger and like really just kind of skyrocket the channel. But instead, I ended up kind of having to use like really, really big games for just clawing myself out of the algorithm pit that was during 2020 into 2021. So again, there was just changes being made here and there. And then also there's just theories you have to place and figure out like what the heck is happening. Why am I getting a third of my audience that I used to get? Um, you end up having to like feel around the dark is the best way to describe it, to just kind of find your way as far as either succeeding or just maintaining on the YouTube platform. And yeah, it can be really stressful and annoying. So it's,
Does that scare you to like to have an empire built on one platform that can, fall apart at any time?
yeah, it is. And, I would say 2020 to 2021 really it was an eye opener for how much influence I had outside the platform. And it's not like entirely disappointing, but it's certainly like it helps me understand uh like, oh goodness, okay, I have to adapt quickly. Otherwise I have to pick a different career or something like that. And it was scary. And then I just said a second ago, I learned to adapt in different ways. Like I'll tell you this: before 2020, I never had an interest in doing sponsorships. I just never had this philosophy of, get as much money as humanly possible. I've always just kind of felt like make enough money to live comfortably enough to enjoy life. And I'm not a guy that needs to live too far outside his own means. I grew up with a low income family. So to have something even just a peg above that is it's a huge gift. It's something I'm very thankful for. But even with that said, the YouTube platform went from giving me like a lifestyle that was, fair, middle class, to suddenly it's like, we're just ripping that away from you. Figure it out. So anyways, I never had an interest in doing sponsorships because YouTube was paying me just fine. And then it went from paying me just fine to making it so I can't afford anything, even if I was living
Yeah.
with low means. So I brought in sponsorships, and that changed everything. It was like, wow, it, in most cases, you make more doing sponsorships than you ever did pulling in monthly ad revenue. So
Sure.
like that helped. And what I would just do with that money is just to reinvest in the channel and do my best to, kind of figure out what went wrong, what I could do better, or if I just have to persevere until the algorithm kicks back in and we're back in game, basically. And something, somewhere. I mean, it's not like um, I'm doing better than ever, but I certainly have, like I said, crawled out of that pit that was in 2020 into 2021. So things are kind of leveling out and normalizing again. And now I'm like in a sense still trying to adapt and do better for the channel and myself by bringing on a second person. Now I'm trying to bring on a second producer, because I think one of the biggest issues that I have with my channel is that when the algorithm picked me up, I was doing weekly videos and I had no competition whatsoever. So like there was no standard in which to scale myself to. It was just there's one guy on the internet doing out of bounds content. So people loved whatever I put out each week regardless. And then because people started rolling in and had different time schedules and stuff like that, there was other videos to compare my channel to suddenly, and the standard of Boundary Break had to suddenly change and shift. And so I went from doing weekly videos to 2 videos a month. And I don't think the algorithm has ever liked that. I think that the algorithm has programmed itself to think, well, Shesez has been putting out weekly videos for the first 2 years that we've kind of put him into the system. This is the standard in which we feel that the channel should have. And like, you just don't see that sort of growth that you see with some of my other YouTuber buddies. So to combat that, now that I've kind of got a plan in place, I was like, okay, I think I can realistically bring on a second person, pay them fairly, and hopefully bring it up to a point where we're putting out 4 videos a month again. Realistically, now we can even we can hold on to a video for a couple of days just so that it can land on a Friday, and we can like set a Friday standard for 1 video a week. And I think that that's going to make big changes so long as I find the right person. So as far as adaptability goes, I'm still doing it, man. It's crazy. Yeah, the algorithm is always pressuring its users to do something. It never keeps you can never stay comfortable on the platform.
Well, as a total side note too, I'd love to help if you need to find a producer or videographer or a video production person. Happy to help offline. We can chat about that. But
Cool.
I know folks. But yeah, that seems to be a common trend that we're all just sort of like digital pieces. We're just pixels on the digital ocean, right? And like the ocean carries you where it is, because there is not a clear differentiator between quality. I think like the YouTube algorithm, all the algorithms, like they want you creating content. They want more things up so that it's new and it's fresh and they can put it out there. But there's no real delineation between what's quality and what's not. And we talked, when you were here with Swanky Box at GDEX, that content takes a while to produce. Like it's not something that you can do in an afternoon. I mean, just sifting through the video files alone for the games, I'm sure takes hours and hours and hours before you even start like crunching on the actual video. And that I know Video Game Donkey's mentioned things about this, where he does like roughly a video a week, where he's talked about how the YouTube algorithm just seems like it's an ever-present force on your shoulders. But it seems I do 1 show a week, and that's with Lucas helping me on the production side. Now, granted, this is not our full-time thing, right? But still, it's a lot. I mean, we're still trying to get it up there, and just seems like I don't know what the answer to that is. This is just my like sitting in a chair rambling. I don't know where we're gonna go, but like, how do you find the good stuff? It's obvious that the thumbs up button is not the solution here. Like
When it should, right? Yeah. There's definitely tools that YouTube has in place where quality could float to the top. But I think that over the years, they've stopped caring about curating quality and instead just curating engagement. How long can you keep a person on the platform? how often are you contributing to the website? I think honestly, at a certain point, although it's never been expressed by anyone on the staff, just kind of like the feel, like just everyone across site kind of feels this pressure to constantly put out content now. And it's funny because their words say like, oh, if you need a vacation, take a vacation. Sure. But when I come back, it's going to be like, there's going to be damage control, So it's like, you
Oh
could
yeah.
say that, but like there's nothing that seems to be in place that implies that I could take a vacation and feel comfortable coming back. Um,
Yeah, at
so
GDEX, I moderated the other streaming panel. And we had a bunch of streamers there like Mars and Ellen Torrey and stuff. And that was mentioned in the conversation where it's like, oh yeah, you can take a week, but like you're gonna pay for it. Like there's going to be, you said, in your words, damage control. There's going to be algorithm fixing you're gonna have to do when you take a week off. And if you take 2 weeks off, it's like almost, not starting from scratch per se, but it's can be a heavy hit.
yeah. And again, that's why I'm trying to bring on a second person now. It's to kind of combat that. Again, hopefully, um, I get the right person, and it doesn't upset the audience. There's not like an issue where the audience sees this other person and says like, "Ah, this isn't she says click off" or something like that. The whole goal is to find someone that can carry the cadence into across the
Yeah.
month. But yeah, so as far as solutions go, I mean, like that's the funny thing, right? Is I wish that there was more of a focus on curating, quality content, but then all of a sudden that becomes, what's the word? An objective opinion? Is that the word, or is it subjective?
Subjective, yeah.
Yes, objective. So it's like suddenly you have higher ups at YouTube, they have their own opinions on what's good and what's not good, and if you ever go to these award shows, it can really show you like how messed up a person's opinion can, you know, uh, can skew it, depending on who's in control of that.
Sure.
So yeah, so then that becomes a problem. I do think that like if there was a focus on comments and off-site linkage and uh, as well as likes to dislike ratio, I think that could be a really good way to kind of change how the platform serves people that actually put work into their videos. But again, it just seems that they're not really interested in that right now at YouTube. They're all about driving numbers at the moment. I mean, TikTok's whole philosophy is to kind of throw quality out the window and just give you something that's really quick and engaging
Yeah.
for a moment, So it's like YouTube looks at that, and I'm sure they don't see any reason to shift in the opposite direction. I think that they've made it pretty clear that it's
Yeah.
like, oh, we need to follow the trend. So
Well, I think, and I want to ping back to something we talked about a couple seconds ago. But first, the problem, because there was like YouTube, what was it called? Red, YouTube Premium, like for a while, where you could like subscribe to folks, and like on Twitch you can kind of subscribe to folks, but even that, like we just became a Twitch affiliate, and it's like they take 50% of the money, and I'm like, come on, really? 50%? Apple doesn't even take 50% of your apps. They take 30 and 15 if you're a small developer. They only take 15%. That just seemed like ludicrous to me. But I guess I own Google stock, but other than that, I have no say in any of this. But I feel like the core issue is just all these platforms are pure consumption platforms, right? There's no product being offered, and because of that, it comes down to eyeballs watching advertisements. I mean, that's how it comes down to, and so that's a really challenging place to be for the people that are creating content like you, because YouTube's, whenever you're doing something, so like GDEX, for example, I feel very fortunate that GDEX has been successful because my incentive is aligned with both our community, the guests that come, as well as folks like you, the guests that come and do talks and whatnot. Like all of our incentives are kind of aligned in the same direction. Like we all benefit sort of mutually together if those things are successful. YouTube, I think, can try to make the argument that their incentives are aligned, but I don't think they are. Your incentive is to create good quality content on something that you enjoy and find interesting. And also, I would say, just as a little asterisk on here, that I think that's the way to do it. Like, if you continue to create good content, then over time, it may not feel like it at first, but over time, you'll be able to kind of weather the storms and keep growing an audience. And I mean, you've got a big audience, right? Like, you're almost at a million subscribers. Like, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah.
So you've got people that have your back and whatnot. So keep on keeping on. And along those lines, I want to talk about, we sort of hit on this a little bit too before the show, but just the idea, and earlier on, about the idea of when you first start out, kind of everybody's got your back, everybody's excited. And I don't want this to be like the downtown teary-eyed podcast, but I think
I'll go there. I'm fine with that. No.
we get a lot of people that are curious about, so like GDEX, for example, YouTubing, streaming, podcasting, that kind of stuff. That's always one of our most requested. Like, they want more information about it. How do you get started? How do you do those things? And the community aspect is one. And I'm going to sort of tell, without dropping any names. So before I bring people to GDEX, I generally do like a little research about them. Like, I'll kind of look at their channels and look at the Reddit pages and stuff, just so that I know more about you all. You know, like, I knew your content, but I didn't know anything about you per se. And so I just like to know a little bit about folks so that I can chat with them. And that always gets me wrapped up into the various algorithms for all the different platforms. And over the past couple of weeks, I've been getting, like, almost all of my Reddit feed updates are stuff about the people I looked up to come to GDEX. And I am like, I knew that it could be bad, but like, seeing some of these like Reddit posts about YouTubers and streamers, I'm just like, oh my God, like, the shit you people have to deal with. And like, you know, I read this like giant diatribe about something. I was like, this is how you're spending your life? Like, this took you like an hour to write about some person on the internet you will never see. And most, you know, maybe you'll see a panel or whatever. And I'm just like, God, you guys, like, how do you maintain that sort of positive? Because what you're doing, I think, is just content wise is great. And I think you also have a good vibe about it. Like, there's a bunch of channels on the interwebs that like literally all they do is like bitch about something, right? Like,
Yeah.
they bitch about the news of the day or this or that in the games industry. And I've always been more, not that you should ignore that stuff, but I'm always trying to like bring out positivity and find interesting, optimistic things. That's pretty much what your channel is. But it sounds like you're also having to deal with some of these things.
Yeah. Well, you're not wrong. I mean, like, I don't know what's being said about me on Reddit. I know for a time, the way it
I
basically
mean, do you
worked
read
was,
through this content at all? Like, or if you just stopped like the comments and stuff, do you even look at that anymore?
I do. Yeah. I look at my YouTube comments all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I always try to, I kind of like, I like the positive feedback, you know, where you put so much work into it. You're doing like 15 days of constant working, and you just love to see the appreciation from people. And, you know, of course, when you choose to do that, you're bound to find people that just have really petty complaints, or they'll maybe have a legitimate criticism or something like that. With
Yeah.
Reddit, you know, I used to check Reddit, and Reddit I would actually like to thank and also spite Reddit in a way, because deeply thank Reddit, because there was a time where if you got a lot of off-site linkage on YouTube, it would help boost your channel. And Reddit for a time was boosting all of my videos to the top of their subreddit pages, like top of our gaming, not our games, because our games is mostly memes and stuff like that. But our gaming is like a different one where it's more about, you know, more curated content. It's interesting. It's like the difference between YouTube and TikTok. And so like I would get hit the top of our gaming, our Nintendo, and then with certain games, you know, it would be like Grand Theft Auto. I'd hit the top of Grand Theft Auto and stuff like that, and that was amazing. And then my success, I think, was riding a little too high for some people. And with Reddit, you can't really curate anything unless the community at large decides we don't really care for this. And so I started to see people that were being devious basically by nature. So like you'll see those terrible troll comments, and when you think a troll comment, you think like this guy, I don't know what sort of language you can use on this podcast, but
You can say whatever you want, sir.
yeah, you'd be like, oh, this channel sucks, like in all caps and all this stuff, and it's like this guy, this and that. This is the sort of stuff that you would see when you think of a troll comment. But a Reddit troll is a different breed now. Like they're a lot smarter. So how do you get something off of your subreddit that you don't want to see anymore on Reddit? You convince people it's not good. So what they'll do is, what I started to see was they would find like one little problem in a 30-minute video, like one little thing, and their comment would be like, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. A real game developer would never say this or that. And like, he's just kind of like doing armchair speculate, like basically trying to
But you never claimed to be a game developer either, right?
No. And although I don't take the time to explain it every episode, there's definitely been multiple occasions where I've said, this is definitely a program really meant to give you interesting things to look at from the perspective of a gamer seeing it for the first time. And although there's interest from me to bring on a game developer to speak, about it with professionalism, just keep in mind that I'm not a professional game developer. But with that said, then there was people that would take those comments and say like, see, he's not even a game developer. He doesn't even know anything about game development. And so like those top comments, people would read the first most highly upvoted reply to the post, see something like that, and without checking out the video, just kind of hit a downvote because they read from the community that this isn't worth your time and just trusted those words. And I would see that more and more, and it's like, oh man, it's just a snowball effect. And it's like, it's kind of disgusting, honestly, that like I know that person genuinely doesn't feel that way. They just, for whatever reason, don't like the show. And so they're just kind of like orchestrating a way to kind of keep the show suppressed on their subreddits.
I was watching another channel about, and I want to talk to you at some point about the Last of Us Part 2 video because I'm kind of curious about something, but somebody did like a Last of Us. Oh, am I still here or did I get bounced? Oh no. Am I? Did he get bounced then? Jesus, did we lose you? We'll give him a second to come back. Lucas, how are you doing?
I am doing okay. A little busy, as always, but I am having a great time. But yeah, it seems like we lost our guest, so that.
Yeah.
I'm back.
Oh, they're back.
Yeah, apparently, I don't know. I think my computer just kind of pooped out. I don't know what happened there. But now I'm just kind of doing the rest of this thing on my phone, so hopefully that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Lucas, do what you
Sorry
gotta
about that.
do to clean it up.
Yep.
Yeah, no worries. If we're back, we can continue on.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the things I saw on another YouTuber who was doing a Last of Us Part 2 like 1 year later kind of thing, and was talking about it, and he put out a survey asking people to like kind of fill out a survey based on their thoughts about The Last of Us Part 2 and all that, which obviously has been mired in various controversies. But he put in questions, like he peppered questions into the survey specifically designed to catch people that had no idea what the game was about or had played the game. And he found, I forget what it was, but it was like some insane number of people had never even played the game, but took the time to fill out this survey trashing the game.
Wow.
And I just
Not
like, wow.
surprised.
And like part of it, I think, is probably just the ease of, you see a link, you click the link, you hop onto Shesez's channel, and you click the down button, right, and go about your day or whatever. But one of the kind of the questions I'm just curious about, since YouTube has changed their like dislike thing, you can see behind the scenes your dislikes, right? Like, has that changed the way that your content has been presented, or that have you noticed any changes as a result of that?
No, and I do think that's like if you wanted to ask me point blank, I think that was one of the worst changes that YouTube has ever done. Even as a creator, you need to be confronted with your own failures when you decide to put out content on the internet. I feel like there are safeguards if you're really not mentally prepared for that. Like you can disable likes to dislikes, and that's basically all that YouTube has ever done on a grand scale. But their whole reasoning was like, well, if you disable like to dislike, it only creates more harassment. And to that, I argue, no. I mean, like, if someone is to turn off like to dislikes on one video, it means that you messed up on a video. Like, you did something or said something that really did not gel well with the community. And it's a sad thing to say. Entertainment is a business that revolves around engagement, and you can be the kind of person that decides, oh, I want to drive up bad engagement because it brings in a lot of haters, which brings in a lot of eyes and ears and stuff like that. I don't recommend that route, but like there are certainly people that like strategically decide to do that. And alternatively, you got, people that are just trying to make good content. And sometimes you don't make something good, or you were in a controversy and you're addressing a controversy. And so you just kind of have to deal with the fact that the community may, at mass, dislike your video. Or alternatively, here's the reason why I think that they should keep it. Here's the biggest thing that we lost that change. Someone may have like a tutorial video that doesn't accurately give you the tutorial, and it could be 20 minutes long. And people sat there, watched the video, and determined this is inaccurate information, and so I'm going to dislike it. And it tells people that come into the video immediately, this video is not a good video for how to install a bathroom toilet,
Yeah.
and so they click off of it. Well, now that tool is gone to the community, and so that it's like that's a huge reason why I disagree with that idea of taking away dislikes. It's definitely not
Yeah.
done anything for me. It hasn't changed anything that I've done on my end. In fact, I mean, I still look to see if there's any dislikes and see just how much the community may have disliked a certain choice that I made. Anytime I bring on a raid sponsorship, for example, like you see like a 3% dip in likes, but um, it's just something that it's information that's still valuable to me. I look at it and I say, okay, it does create problems on a small scale. So do I continue to do that in the future? Well, it's a decision that I can make for myself, but at least I know I have accurate information that tells me how much my viewers dislike that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's an interesting take for me because you're like, oh, you can instantly look if people like or dislike the video, right? I never ever rarely look at the likes to dislike ratio. Like it's just something for whatever reason, and maybe it's kind of the same way where like I just don't really care what people have to say. I as a consumer have never really found it particularly useful piece of information. And so to hear a different take on it where you're finding, I guess, in certain slices, it can be valuable. I just find that really, really interesting. Uh, and sort of back to the sort of the Reddit thing with um, the negativity and stuff. It's like, I don't know, man. Like it's just a lot. It's a lot, dude. It's a lot to like put on people to have hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of comments that are just there. I mean, in essence, trashing you, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
legitimate or not. And I think a lot of the comments that bother me the most, the ones that are like just posts about like personal stuff. Like it's not even about the content necessarily of what's being made. It's about the person or the personality. That seems like it seems like you have to find a way to create a. I think you used. I'm paraphrasing. You used a term here, but you've got to create this sort of mentality to walk through that field. Because at the end of the day, you're just a dude trying to create cool videos, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're saying there is like, it, it really shouldn't be something that's on my plate to deal with, like, an insurrection basically of people off site trying to, um, you know, do defamatory posts and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
I do agree. I think for as awesome as Reddit is for, having a deregulated like philosophy where it's like you regulate yourselves within your own communities and stuff like that. Novel idea, but we're also seeing how that social experiment is also kind of foaming to a head. Um,
Yep.
or like, yeah. So it, I do think that there should be certain things now put in place now that we've kind of seen like the peak, the pinnacle of what happens when you go with that route. And one of the things I think that they should just do is like, look, if people are making things up, you know, to kind of like defame you, defamation should be something that you should be able to report with proof, of course. You don't just say, hey, this isn't true, and then it's gone. But like if you have like counter evidence or something like that,
Yeah.
there should be a way to regulate that site wide. Um,
I think we're
because
I think
what's
we're
that?
moving in that direction because it's like if and we're going down a whole other river here, but if you're using social media tweets and posts and things in courts of law, I'm no lawyer man, but like that seems like if you're able to use those items in a court of law, then you're then definitely in like libel territory at that point. And like you said, defamation. Uh, Now, whether or not that'll ever lead to anywhere, I don't know, but you know, I
Yeah.
agree.
Oh,
Um, so what one last thing, we're getting a little tight on time, but I want to kind of end on where you mentioned you're bringing on this other person and sort of you're thinking about the future. And then I sort of had an idea. I don't know if you've done this, but you kind of mentioned it, and forgive me if I not. But have you ever brought on like the devs of a game and then done like a boundary break with one of them being able to talk with you about the decisions and things like that?
oh man, yes, and it's always great when I do. The most recent example is the Stanley Parable Deluxe, Ultra
Oh,
Deluxe.
I gotta watch that
Yeah,
one.
I got to bring on the narrator from the game, and
Oh,
also
that's awesome.
yeah, and then one of the creative leads as well was brought on to kind of answer some questions about the weirder things that I found on the episode. But yeah, it's an occasional thing. I would say like if you've ever watched the early seasons of The Simpsons, like seasons 1 through 10, I
Yeah,
bring on a developer about as often as The Simpsons brought on like a celebrity guest to do a voice or whatever, So it's like it's not like the mainstay of the show, of course, as you know, but as often as I can, I love to bring on the original developers to just talk about the stuff that's in their games.
yeah, that's really awesome. I haven't been as on the ball with the GDEX and stuff, but I started kind of like a game club. It's a book club for games where every month I post a different game and then play it and record it and stuff. And the last game I did, Maquette, I was streaming and one of the devs came on while I was streaming it, and we were talking back and forth while I was sort of finishing up the game, and that was a pretty cool experience to be able to like ask questions as I was going through the process. That that was really neat. Is there
Yeah.
anything else that like you? I mean, maybe you don't want to reveal it yet, but any other ideas or something you're excited about trying in the future for your stuff?
So as far as new ideas, no, but right now I'm in the process of integrating a new series that I've started since I think 2021, I think. Um, it's the Region Break show, and that one has like it's kind of proven itself to be a, a video series that kind of goes shoulder to shoulder with Boundary Break, thankfully.
Okay.
And yeah, I don't have you seen any of them yet?
No, I'm on the YouTube now. Is this looking at different localizations of games?
Yeah, it's comparing and contrasting the same game from two different regions.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, and it's honestly a breath of fresh air. It's more work than Boundary Break is, but because it's something different, the passion is so strong, and it just like it makes it so much more enjoyable to produce than a Boundary Break episode right now. Because I've been doing Boundary Break since 2016, and as amazing as it is to work on, it's just it does become repetitive after a while to go through that process every single time. And I was always eager to come up with something else that I can do, just so I can break up the monotony, just so that I can kind of excite myself creatively.
Yeah.
And Region Break has kind of filled that void. Honestly, it's been super fun. If you need one episode to check out, I recommend the Super Mario Brothers 3 episode to start with, just to kind of give you an idea.
Okay.
That one, yeah, that one's the most popular, and like a couple of aspects of the show got fine tuned by that point. So,
Okay.
um,
That's awesome.
big recommend.
I got it. And dude, that Super Mario Brothers 3, that box cover is like, it's such a good box cover. Like
So
that,
iconic, isn't it?
I know that like that bright yellow contrasting against its complement the blue there. Ah, what a
Super
good,
smart, yeah. Way back in the 90s, like when you had a whole wall of games, like freaking Mario Brothers 3 with its just stark yellow cover, it just would stand out amongst the crowd. And
yeah,
it's just so funny that it works so well with its simplicity. It's like, oh, well, there's just a really, really nice illustration of Mario, that you didn't quite see in the past. Like Mario Brothers 2 had Mario on the front as well, but it had like a kind of like a watercolor, water paintbrush effect to kind of
yeah,
make so it was a bit faded out, but this one's just strong, bold colors against a yellow background. It was effective. It's
totally.
funny how yeah, it's funny how often now you see YouTube videos with just stark yellow backgrounds just to kind of grab people's attention. It's like, oh, it's like full circle, man. I
Yeah,
guess just yellow works.
yeah. History repeats. Yeah, a good art and design. It's timeless. Um, Sweet man. Well, we've gotten to the end of our time together here. I want to thank you again for being on the show. I've had a blast chatting with you. I always like to end by, is there anything else you'd like to talk about, and how can people get a hold of you if they want to reach out to you, or where can they find your content?
So if you want to find my content, just type into the YouTube search engine Boundary Break, or if you're interested in that other series we just talked about, you can type in Region Break, and my videos should be the ones that float to the top. So if you're interested, especially if you can think of a game you want to see out of bounds, type in your favorite game and Boundary Break. There's a good chance that I've probably covered it. So give it a shot and see what pops up. As far as talking about anything else, uh, no, I don't think so.
Mhm.
I was like, no, I guess not. We're probably short on time, huh? We can't go into a whole nother subject, right?
Yeah, well, hopefully we can do another episode sometime in the future. I really appreciate you being so I don't know the word, approachable and accessible. I think it's, first of all, it's really cool, but second of all, I really enjoy just building out my sort of connections and making new friends. And I mean, we talked back at the beginning of this conversation. We kind of talked about this, but like GDEX, for example, just exists because of, a friend introduced me to a friend, and I've gotten to know people. And you talked about how in your early days you had your show, and then the community kind of like moved you along in a direction. This show originally, when I was going to start it, was going to kind of be like a news, what's going on in the industry kind of recap show. And then I sort of realized it's like there's a bazillion of those shows. Like, why would anybody care what I have to say? And I was like, well, you know what? My strengths are in game development and the network I've cultivated over the past decade of doing GDEX and building out our community. So why don't I just do a show where I invite people doing cool stuff in the game industry on and just chat about it? And that's how this show became this thing. And you are episode 21 of it, so we're still new, but we've been doing it since January. So I appreciate you being on the show and being a part of it, and also last minute jump into GDEX. So thank you for that.
Dude, I hopefully next year, if you have the time and the budget, the scheduling, I'd love to come back. Yeah, it was a great con and it was easy to drive to. So, and it was great meeting you, and also Lucas, that's hiding in the background there. It was great meeting you both.
Yeah, same
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah, I think we are just sort of getting started planning next year's show. So I'll definitely hit you up about that. And I'm sure I'll see you somewhere if it's not another convention, or if you're in uh, Columbus some other time, we can grab dinner or drink or something. So thank you again
Sure.
for being on the show.
No problem, Chris. Take
Awesome.
it easy, sir.
So thank you everybody for watching. This has been the Volpe Creates Show, the weekly talk show about video games and creative technology, coming to you every week on Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern here on the Twitches. A reminder that if you want to be a part of the community, you can join us at volpecreates.com/discord, where you can ask questions and whatnot during our show. And on behalf of Pumpkin, Baby Girl, Mr. Lucas, and myself, thank you all for watching, and we will see you next week.
See ya.